All right. Hello, everybody. Thank you guys so much for tuning in for our third session of Boss Moves. This is our first online session, and we are excited today to have Mr. Paul Goodnight, an amazing artist that's going to be interviewed by Aziza Robinson-Goodnight, an artist in her own right, as well as the executive director of TCP Transformative Culture Project. Guys, I'm sorry. I'm just remembering that I didn't close the windows and I can hear all of the noise from Columbia Road. So I apologize.
I thought that was out here. Go ahead.
Right? But thank you guys for coming. Welcome, welcome. How are you guys feeling tonight?
Pretty good.
We're good. Yeah. I'm excited to have this conversation. Before we even get into it, I want to read a few words from Paul Goodnight's bio. I am a major fan, Mr. Goodnight. So like I was saying to you, like it's such an honor to have you here. I remember, I'm an immigrant from Port-au-Prince, Haiti. And so I remember.
No, really?
Yeah. I remember the first time. So I was a fan of your work, didn't know it was your work, from the Cosby Show. And I remember the first time my sister, who was in college, was doing a piece. She's an artist as well. She was doing a piece inspired by your Dozens project. And I was like, who is that? Who's the work by? And that's when I first learned that you were local and that it was the same art that I had seen, back in the Cosby Show. And it's just been amazing to see like your journey and your career just, take off. But to know that you're local is just amazing.
Do you know I lived in Haiti for a year?
Yes, I did. When I saw your documentary, I found out about that. Yeah, that was exciting to hear as well. So let me just read a few words from Mr. Goodnight's bio. So Paul Goodnight was born in Chicago, raised in Boston and New London, Connecticut, where he discovered his passion for art. After serving an extended and traumatic tour of duty during the Vietnam War, Goodnight returned to Boston and began to pursue a career as an artist, first of all, as a way of seeking self-healing and balance. He received his BFA and honorary MFA from the Mass College of Art. Since the 70s, Goodnight's work has gained national and international acclaim with exhibitions in both the Museum of Fine Art and the Museum of the National Center of African American Artists in Boston, as well as being selected as part of a permanent collection at the Smithsonian in Washington, D.C. Paul's work has also been featured in films such as Ghost, The Preacher's Wife, Speed 2, Jackie Brown, Gone Baby Gone, among others, and numerous television programs, including Dallas, ER, Seinfeld, The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, and The Cosby Show, where I first saw your work, which collectively propelled his work into the mainstream. Bishop Desmond Tutu, Smokey Robinson, Lionel Richie, Maya Angelou, Samuel L. Jackson, Angela Bassett, and Andre Agassi are just a few of the notable collectors, and I hope to be one of those collectors very soon as well. His work has been published in Ebony, Architectural Digest, Essence, People, and the Boston Globe and Decor. In 1996, Goodnight was commissioned to create a piece for the Olympic Games, and in 1998, he designed the World Cup poster. I mean, he's pretty impressive, guys. And like I said, it's amazing that he's local. He was awarded the U.S. Sports Academy Artist of the Year in 1997. But of all of his accomplishments, he credits Aziza, his daughter, as being his greatest inspiration. So it's really exciting to have you both here. I can't wait to see the dynamic. And, I have to say, while I was off and we were prepping, I did catch a little bit of you guys, before I came on. And you guys are just like the cutest. You really are. The dynamic between you guys is amazing. So without further ado, I'm going to let you guys take it over. For you guys who are watching, please put in the chat any of the questions that you have for Mr. Goodnight. I will be coming back and asking him the questions. So please feel free to chat away, talk to us, send in your questions. All right. I'll leave you guys to it.
Thank you.
All right. You ready?
I'm ready.
All right. It's wonderful to know that I'm your
You're my daughter.
Inspiration. But I want to ask a question that probably a lot of people want to know, and it's, how did you get started, and what inspired you to keep going?
I don't know if I've ever didn't do art. I mean, I used to do it constantly everywhere. I mean, I just never made a thing about it. I just never thought that art in itself was an avenue for success. But I just knew I liked to do it. I don't remember ever not doing it. I mean, I played football, did all the other kinds of stuff, boxed, but I would always come back to the arts, drawing, capturing things.
So tell us a little bit about the story of in school, like when your teacher sort of figured out you're an artist.
Well, he did. The I know what you're talking about. We had. Why did you? Okay, so I used to draw a lot during English class, and I draw probably about, for one new drawing I would draw for these kids 25 cents. 25 cents is pretty good. For two, it would be 50 cents. And for kind of like an orgy, it would be like $1.50. So this was all during the English class. And then as I was drawing this multi-sexual image, the teacher, Miss Piaseski, I never forgot her, came up behind me and she said, "Oh, Miss Goodnight, what are you doing?" And I looked up at her nervously, said nothing. So she said, "Let me see what you're drawing." And I started to eat it as she goes, "Go down to the principal's office and tell him what you did." So I started eating it because I didn't want to show it. That was $1.50. I couldn't believe it.
Money.
Yeah, I know it.
Even more now.
It didn't even taste good. And so I went down to the principal's office and said, "What are you down here for now, Mr. Goodnight?" I said, "Well, the teacher told me I was doing something strange." And so the teacher came down and the principal asked, "What is he doing down here?" He said he was drawing pornographic material. Oh, no, I wasn't. Yes. So I went down, she sent me home, the principal sent me home. Grandma said, "What are you doing home so early?" I said, "Because they had me said that I was drawing phonographs." She said, "What?" I was in English class and I was drawing phonographs. So he sent me back to school. He said, "You sent him home for drawing phonograph?" I said, No. That boy was drawing phonographic material. Well, she looked at me, I looked at the ground, and I didn't know what that word was. So she beat me for being stupid, that I don't even know my language. Also for drawing the materials, and where did I get the mindset to do those materials? So I had a real dark butt.
And now you teach figure drawing, so all of that was worthwhile in the end. And you made money from the beginning. You learned how to sell it, and now you teach it. So that's wonderful.
Listen to her.
So what inspired you to actually keep going? Because I know that you went away to war, you had a different life, and then you came back and you used it for what?
I think the question is, where did it really start, right? And I believe that since I really couldn't formulate words well after the war, my outlet was to draw. And so I was thought of as sort of quiet artist, because if I spoke, you wouldn't understand what I was saying. So I would draw, and most artists. So, anyways, what I was doing is I drew these pictures only to get the attention, not for any other reason, female attention, of course. And I knew that I liked it. I really found that this might be an avenue for me. And I used to look at Gary Rickson's work, and it was called Africa, the Beginning. And it was on the YMCA down on Lawrence Street.
It still is, right?
I think it is.
Yeah. So
But it used to be on the side. Now it's on the back. But anyways, I would see that in the process of healing myself, because I had a lot of problems coming back from the war. Heroin and everything else was a part of my diet. And I just did not like anything other than that picture. Because I think when you come back from a very, very traumatic experience, you look at the world completely different. It's black and white over there. There's so many gray areas here. So I mean, I digress. But so I went back. The idea is maybe I can find some way where I can do something like that, larger than life it was. And I said, I wanted to do that. Of course, I had a GI Bill. And I was going to take advantage of it. And I went to this little school called Vesper George, and it was on St. Paul Street. And I met this fella, Paul Healy, who's been in my life since then. And I said, at that time, they were recruiting a lot of Black students because this was during the 70s. And there was riots in the streets and all kinds of other things. So at that point, I was recruited from Vesper, Georgia to go to Mass College of Arts. We had what they called the BAU, Black Arts Union. And we was very supportive of each other, very productive. And we did pretty much what we wanted. And then we knew that we were going to get funded if we more funds as a BAU, Black Artists Union. If we did something collectively. So we had shows throughout the city and outside the city, and they would fund us. And that with those funds and our own money, we were able to go to what we called the NCA, the National Conference of Artists, where they had convened every year in a different city or a different country. And I met these artists. Oh my God. These were real artists. I mean, they were fundamentally understanding exactly the role that an artist should have. And I met people like, you probably won't know their names, but there's Charles White and Omar Beard and John Biggers, who really took me on, and Nelson Stevens, and oh my God, just piles of them. And they talked about content. And it was the first time I ever heard that art was about content. And so there was one thing that John always said to me that I never forgot. He would say, your job is what you get paid for, but your calling is what you're made for. And that kind of clinched it. I mean, he told me more things than that, but that clinched it. He said, this is my calling. This is going to be my salvation. This is going to probably, the only time that I would tell the absolute truth is when I get on the canvas or something like that, because that's what's coming out.
So,
am I getting too wordy?
No, that's wonderful. So from that inspired you to make the boss moves you made. So we heard your bio. We know that you've done a lot. You've been dubbed Artist of the Screen because of all of the film and TV shows you've been on. You've done commissions for the Olympics more than once. You've done commissions for the World Cup. Like you're in permanent collections. Like what inspired you? Those are boss moves. What inspired you to just keep doing it? Because being an artist is not easy.
It's like I said, it's your calling. And there's probably three things that you really need to maintain whatever your calling is. And those three things is great teachers. And I had Paul Ray Healy, who was a great teacher. You have to have also great mentorship. and I had John, who was my mentor. And then you have to have advocates. And advocates can be anybody, but they basically are championing what you do and helping in any way they possibly can. And so I had dozens and dozens of those. I also had at that time we were dealing with a young woman by the name of Elba Vargas, who basically came in and organized the business of art. So I had no idea what the business of art was about. And she said, Paul, you need to know the business. You don't need to do it because you're going to be production, but you need to know what I do. And that made all the difference in the world, dealing with consignments, how do you write contracts, some of the, I can't think of them all, but there's a lot of little layers of business work that you can do within the arts and be productive and somewhat successful. And I think during the late 80s, 90s, there was a barrage of work that was going on throughout the country of Black artists. Like it was like a renaissance. And so there was definitely Black art shows throughout the country. And we went to them. We went, to Atlanta, we went to Philadelphia, New York, all the way down in New Orleans, out west of California. And we profited from it. I mean, it was on a yearly basis too. So we did a good job. And I have a lot of people to thank for that. And of course, knowing the business of art, that Elba was able to help me get into those screen things, because this was a time in the late 80s or the late 70s, 80s, around the time when you were born, when they were starting to have a lot of Black sitcoms, the spinoffs from Cosby and Fresh Prince, and there was the one with Queen Latifah. I can't remember that name. You remember that?
Living Single.
Living Single, and then there was Martin, and then I did some crossover stuff with Seinfeld and and a couple of other ones. So it really worked. But the funny thing about the Fresh Prince one is a fellow by the name of Jonathan, and he was part of I think his last name, so I said Jonathan. So he was part of the Hollywood Cinema of Arts in California, and he was desperately trying to find some Black art because what Hollywood Cinema Arts is, it's a huge studio, like one of those plain chefs. Yeah. And they had every artwork of every genre, of every, like if it was a Western, if there was some other kind, they had all of that art. They didn't have any Black art. So Barnett Hollywood was one of the first that Cosby chose for his, because he was choosing the artwork. But at the Fresh Prince, they didn't have any artwork, and they didn't know where to go. In comes Goodnight.
So the piece that he's talking about is directly between the living room and the kitchen. So when the piece of artwork that they're constantly passing, that is the piece of artwork that Red Snapper that is on Fresh Prince that gave a lot of visibility to my dad's work.
It gave me a lot of attention. I think we did that print, and that print wasn't selling at all because we were doing prints at the time. That was what a lot of people were buying. They were buying originals also, but print was going out of style. Like, oh my God. But that particular painting, print, was not selling at all. As soon as it was on that Fresh Prince, subliminally, because I never think of anybody looking at Fresh Prince to see what's on the wall. But it started, Fresh Prince on Monday. We started getting orders on Tuesday, and we couldn't imagine why this was so popular. And then we got calls that said, I want the piece that's on the Fresh Prince. We understand that you did it. Boom, there it was. It was a bonanza, and it just kept going.
And I want to thank you and my mother and everybody else who was involved, because I felt like I lived in museums. I felt like I lived in, as when I was younger, I didn't really appreciate it or understand like what it is. It was just like I'm away from my friends all the time and I'm always doing something. I'm in the museum all the time. It's not that fun, but I appreciate that exposure because I couldn't speak as intelligently as I do about the arts if I didn't have that exposure. So I really, really thank you for that.
Oh.
I never said thank you for that before, but there you go.
But, go ahead. I did want to mention from that we built the color circle. And not only my best advocate, my friend, my gal,
oh my God.
she, Bernice, Aqua, my brother Roland, Dale, Vicky, and Paul Robinson all worked for me or worked with me. I think I worked for them.
Yeah, you work for us.
and
Aziza.
And Aziza. But the core of it, because Aziza was, she was going to colleges. But in the core, and she lived in New York for a period of time. Core of it, we started selling these prints like we were just baking.
Okay.
Yes, I like potato. Yeah, you want a French fry? They were going like crazy, and we were able to successfully develop a business out of the arts because there was a demand.
And that was Color Circle. So Color Circle Art is like my father said, the business that I grew up in and I loved so much. And my family actually worked on a plan to like evolve the business into a newer model called the Institute of Black Art. So and it's like a 3-tiered model. We want to see a building for the Institute of Black Art. My dad can talk about sort of the vision, but it's advocacy, teaching and learning, and also the business of art. So that's like a 3-tiered model. But my dad can talk more about like, well, sort of more. We don't want to give everything away. But the Institute of Black Art is like an evolved version of my parents' business. They started Color Circle Art when our Black art businesses weren't even like really flourishing. So they had to do a lot of stuff and learn on their own. A lot of people wouldn't even give them the knowledge. So right now there's all this knowledge and now these accelerators for Black artists, which is really wonderful. But they did it 27 years ago when that wasn't like the case. So it's evolved into a new model that includes me. And so my dad can talk a little bit more. Like this is the evolution and the innovation of an art business.
Well, I think what we're talking about now is marketing. Are you talking about the building?
I'm talking about Tiba as a model and like the building it would be.
Yeah, I would love to. This is very, very ambitious project, but I would love to see art in the community as an adjunct of building that community. And there's a lot of things that I would love to see that is in there, and not talk about it too much. But I wanted it to be a teaching element. I also wanted to be a showcase element. I also wanted to have artists who came in there with their own expertise, and to come in there and also give lessons on art. I love to see the muralists do a mural every 2-3 years on the wall in that particular building, so they would learn the craft. There's book writing, like Aqua is basically did children's book. I wanted her to also impart that. There's Rob Stahl, who has done comics. Are they called comics nowadays? Or novels, Marvel novels or something. I want him to do that. I wanted to also have sculptors come in there. The macrame and ceramics and all of those things that people would, and also the Doogie clays and silk screens and photography, have all of that in one building as service to the community, because we would also be producing, developing pieces like whether it's silk screen for T-shirts or something, whatever it is, that it all is coming out of the imagination of the artist. Saying that it's a teaching element, it's a learning element, it's the teaching the business. We need to know the right kind of business development that you would get into. And what lawyers really serve you best? Intellectual lawyers, intellectual property lawyers are the ones that serve you best because they basically know the ins and outs of copyrights and so forth. So, yes, we are moving into a new realm here. And Aziza is trying to pilot some of that. And I have a couple of other people, Carl McLaurin, who's also working with me, and I just picked up one in New Jersey and one in Detroit. So they'll be representatives for me also. But you have to have a core. I mean, I'm production. People are management, and they do what they do well. So that's why I have.
Awesome. I'm looking at questions. So we've talked about business. We talked about you being artists. I have a little different questions. Maybe questions that I want to know and everybody else wants to know. So talk about like the love story that made me. Like, what was that? What was that like? I don't know much. So everybody knows I don't know much of that story. I just know that these two wonderful people are my parents and I love them to death. But I know, well, actually I know my mother's side. I do not know my dad's side of this.
We'll talk about it later.
No.
Yes, girl. I mean, your mother is as charming as all. And I think we'll talk about it. But I don't want to do it over here. I mean, it's much too personal, much too intimate. There's no doubt about it that she has been affected, and she lost a little bit of.
No, we're not talking about that. We're talking about the love story that made me.
The love story was really that I lived upstairs, she lived downstairs in this community, and we met, we clicked. That's as much as I'm going to talk
about. Okay. How did me being born change your life?
Oh, that made all the difference. I mean, first of all, I did not want children. I was an artist. And
that was an accident?
No, you weren't really not an accident. I didn't want children. I wanted to be an artist. I wanted to develop as an artist. And I thought children were going to be in the way. She told me that she was pregnant, her mother, your mother. And I said, okay. What are you going to do? I said, well, you know, I told you we want children. So what are we going to do? She said, well, she was very clear. He said, if you don't want to have any part of this child, it's going to be your loss. And I carried that with me for a minute, saying, you know, she's right. I myself grew up without a father. And I said, I don't want that to be my legacy, that I'm going to abandon this child. So as soon as she came out and I saw her as a baby, I thought she was Chinese.
Now you're talking to me. So
I thought you were Chinese. And I looked over at the Chinese baby and I said, I think we switched babies. The Chinese man came in there and he looked at me looking at his baby. Why you do? Why you do? It's so funny. I said, I think we switched baby. No, baby. He went and got security. He said, he's trying to steal my baby. I said, look, man, your baby, I want to see if it's black. Because my baby looks like he's Chinese. And they threw me out of the hospital. And I said, oh my God. I was going to get arrested, but they just told me to leave. But when I recognized that because she was then turning from yellow to a little darker, and her hair was very, very straight, like a Chinese person. I'm saying, oh no. But I realized that this is something that I've made. We created this. So I did the Kunta Kinte thing. I took Aziza, I took you up on the mountain, and I saw her. Behold, I put you in a backpack, and I climbed this mountain to the highest top, way up there in the Blue Hills. I said, behold, and I forgot what else I said, but I was saying to all of the people who died, like Uncle Bernard and so forth and so on, Uncle Asbury, help me. But I don't know what I'm doing. And I put it back in my backpack, climbed down the mountain. My mother said, where you been? I said, I took her to the dentist.
To the dentist?
Yeah, and not knowing that you didn't have any teeth, but I had to figure out something. To the dentist. I said, well, I took her out to medical thing. And then I had to tell her the truth. She said, you climbed the mountain with my baby in the backpack? Yeah, I did.
And my dad's like a real like military veteran. Like he's a real and a guy's guy. So he really put a little baby in a backpack and climbed a mountain. So I guess that's why I'm pretty fearless.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
I remember you when we used to go to Franklin Park and we would climb this mountain. And I was always fearful of her doing it because that I'd have, her cousins and stuff climb the mountain with us. She scaled that mountain like, oh, mercy, this girl's going to kill herself. She scaled the mountain past me, past William, past all of us. Girl.
So I was probably supposed to be a boy, but we had a good time together. Karate, sparring, gymnastics, swimming,
skating,
all those wonderful things.
Yeah.
But I made it for it, I guess, huh?
No.
Next question.
Okay.
So I know how your life changed when I was born. How did your life change when August was born? That's my daughter.
I don't know if it's changed. It's just made me more aware that there's another person in our lives that needs the attention. And August is very bright, very intuitive. I think more intuitive than anything else. And it shocks me some of the things that she might say. And some of it is funny, some of it is deep, as a deep thought.
She's 5.
And she's 5 years old, and she thinks, in interesting ways. I remember this one story. This is funny. I was holding her down here, and she looked up my nose, and she said, "Ooh, Abu, you got hair up in your nose."
What is it?
I said, yeah. And so she reached up and put her finger up my nose. And I said, oh, don't do that. She said, but you got hair up in your nose. I said, all right, don't, I'll leave it there. She said, okay. He said, when the boogers come, the hair is going to stick to them. Oh, God, that girl cracks me up.
She cracks me up, too. She's always talking.
Yeah.
It's nonstop.
She's a blessing, though. She really is a blessing.
Definitely. She is a child that I didn't expect either, but she's definitely worth everything. Everything. What is your favorite thing to do? I don't think I'd ever asked.
Well, swimming is one of the things
I didn't know that.
Yeah, you did. I like to swim. I like to hear music. I watch TV. I read. My favorite thing to do is to create. I mean, no one has to ask me to do. I think I like teaching also. I like teaching because I like learning. And if you're really a good teacher, you're really a good student of the game. So that's why I said I had a great teacher. Paul Healy was absolutely wonderful. Had a great sense of humor, and he taught. But he was so great. And I learned a lot of fundamentals. And now I'm taking sculpture with another teacher, uh, um, Chuck Stigliano. And I'm learning a whole new craft because you never stop learning. So I'm learning a whole new craft. Go ahead.
What? Oh, so
You want to talk about that?
your whole new craft? Yeah. So I know that you taking on a craft that's I'm better at. My dad can paint better, but I can sculpt better. Well, he's in class, so he can probably sculpt better than me soon. But I am
soon.
Yeah, I'm originally the better sculptor. So let's talk about that. We're both working on a project. I have been the chair of the Frederick Douglas Sculpture Project for the last almost 11 years now. We'll have a sculpture of Frederick Douglass on the corner of Hammond and Tremont across from Slade's really soon as our landscape architects and our sculptor can actually place the pieces. Most of that work is done. But my dad was asked to come aboard the project to draw the image from the community of Boston, because the sculptor that was chosen is not a sculptor from Boston. His name is Mario Chiodo. He's from California. So my dad and Mario worked closely together to create a design that is now complete.
Right. I did the drawings, but I did a lot of research. I went down to New Bedford where Frederick Douglass started his origin. Found out a whole lot about him. And so the more, I knew Frederick Douglass was a monumental figure, but I didn't know all of what he did. And when you find out what one man did during the time of slavery, really, I call him the godfather of the civil rights movement because he really was. So I went down to New Bedford and found out where his boarding house and where he did his first oratory. Went to Annapolis, where his house was, near Washington, D.C. a little bit, find out a little bit more about him. Uh, I was going to New York, where his house got burnt down, but I didn't make it. I wanted to digest, and of course, there was this woman, Murchie Frazier, who was also feeding me more and more information about Frederick Douglass, and whoever preceded or whoever came behind Frederick Douglass was a product of him, like Martin Luther King and Malcolm X and all of these great civil rights leaders were products of his development as a man to recognize that he was as much a man in America as anybody else. He helped the women's suffrage movement. He was really dynamic there. In the Civil War, the Union soldiers, two of his sons fought in the Civil War, and he recruited heavily in this area. He was an ambassador. He did things that nobody ever believed was possible to do. He was a slave, and he basically wrote his own ticket. He learned how to read and write when he was 9 years old, because the slave master's wife taught him how to read and write. He was a brilliant man. His name really wasn't Douglas at all, but he adopted that name when he stowed away on the train and came up. But he was an incredible leader, a privilege to be able to do the drawings and to learn. I mean, like I said, teaching is learning, and learning is really phenomenal. And you have to read his Declaration of Independence Day speech. It's amazing. I mean, this guy doesn't get as much credit as our late civil rights leaders, but he was the one that really, who showed us, as the old saying goes, is who showed us that we really tiptoe. So,
Awesome. So you take sculpture class now.
yeah, for the last 4 years.
So I'm gonna ask you a question, but it's getting dark in here. Is there another light? We're in my dad's apartment, his dungeon. If you can see his artwork. So you'll turn on the light. There you go.
Is that good?
I think so. Yeah, that's better.
Okay.
So, like I said before, this is my dad's apartment. He's lived here since before I was born. It's full with artwork and wonderful, beautiful things. It's a studio that he lives and works, and I couldn't imagine him living anywhere else, or he probably wouldn't be able to create as fully as he does now until we get a building. But so you're on that Frederick Douglass sculpture project. So what's next, like as far as like sculpture and expanding your craft?
Well, I was last month, April. I was asked would I be able to do another sculpture. I said absolutely, but this one I want to have hands on. So there's a Malcolm X sculpture to be done at Malcolm X Park. It's on the corner of Walnut and Martin Luther King Boulevard. That's where that will stand. That's Malcolm X Park, and it is a blessing because I mean I kind of grew up under the era of Malcolm X. I met one of his daughters, and she bought one of my pieces of Ilyasha, and we had a nice dialogue about her father and Malcolm's nephew who lives here. There's Ronell Collins. He asked if I would be interested in doing a sculpture, a bust or a full-length sculpture of Malcolm X because he knew of my work. And I said, you know, it just so happens that that's what I've been wanting to do for a long time. I'm going to do all of the drawings. I'm going to try and get one of the other of my students or proteges to work with me and drawing up what we think would be a nice, unique symbol of Malcolm that we possibly can make. So I'll do all the drawings, and then I'll be apprenticed under Chuck Stiliano, actually doing it tactile, doing the hands-on thing.
So that's similar to my dad did a piece in Ruggles Station. So if you're like walking out of Ruggles Station towards Tremont Street and you look up, like that's sort of a hand tactile sort of sculpture piece that he did when I was really young.
And she helped do it well. You know, you let her play in clay.
Don't play, homie.
She played right, you know. She did, put her thumb in there. So, oh, that's beautiful, Aziza.
I think that's why I'm the better sculptor now because of that exposure. So, if you were to give me any advice about the three things that you told me are like the most important to manage: your home, your home, your personal life, your spirituality, and what was the third one?
I don't remember. Your home, your spirituality, and I guess your fitness and my whole thing.
No, that's home.
Me being fit?
Yeah.
Okay, so the other two, the other one thing, it could be a number of things.
Like think about what advice would you want me to, like if you were not able to give me any advice like tomorrow.
You've got to be committed to something that's going to change your life. I mean, there's a thing. In fact, I wrote this down, and I said it's called good relationships is the highest form of conscious practice and growth. What is this? Contrasting experiences helps me respect and see life in a different way, causing me to make new choices. I am open to the situation that supports the gift, the talent, the skill, and creative ability to add value to my life. I am grateful for the gift of new and old relationships. They are the spiritual fertilizer. That's fertilizer to anyone growth and transformation. Just like the caterpillar that evolves into a butterfly. I think that is really capsulizing what the difference between your commitment and your involvement. Your commitment, as John would say, we had this conversation because John Biggers came here, and I was trying to get his attention. I'll make this one. I was trying to get his attention because he had a show at the MFA, and everybody was around him. So I felt ownership. So I said, John, I want you to come by and see my work. He lives in Texas. And he said he would. But I didn't accept that answer. So I kind of got a little aggressive. And I said, John, when are you going to come by and see my work? And he looked at me and I said, it's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday? Huh? and he said, oh, wait a minute, Paul. So now I know he's getting ready to read me, and I turned into that little puppy, right? He said, let me ask you one question. What is that? He said, are you committed or are you involved? I said, John, you know I'm committed. I said, we talk about art. Why do we do it? Who do we do it for? What's our inspiration? You know I'm committed. And he goes, well, okay, Paul, that's all I need to know. You know, it's like a ham and egg sandwich. You understand, don't you? And I shook my head, yes, like a fool. And I said, ham and egg sandwich? I said, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know. And he goes, see, in the ham and egg sandwich, Paul, the chicken who laid the egg was involved. But the pig, he was committed. Whoa, that's deep. This is the first time I've ever been called a pig and enjoyed it. But the idea was commit yourself to something and get yourself involved in other things. But that involvement is temporary. Your commitment is for life. And once you can get yourself in the space where you know what your calling is, you really will evolve. You will flower. You will grow inside yourself.
Awesome. So this is how I've always gotten advice all my life. I might not have fully understood it when I was younger. I do now.
I didn't understand it either when he said it.
This is great. Oh, so, and think about, so I come from a rare Black family. Like all of us have pursued education in the art world. My mom went to UMass Amherst, where she studied art. My dad went to Mass Art and also has an honorary master's degree from Mass Art. And I went to Hampton University and studied art. So my dad talks about John Biggers, and John Biggers is not only really important to my family, but John Biggers also did 3-story paintings in the library at Hampton University. So that's how full circle my art family is.
Yeah.
And we're super committed to art education. John Biggers also was a teaching artist at Hampton University and my dad's mentor as well.
No, he taught at St. Texas.
And Hampton. That's how I was working on him.
Yeah, he was going here.
No, here's.
Okay.
We'll debate this later. But yes, John Biggers met his wife at Hampton University, Hazel Biggers, and she started a scholarship for artists. She started a scholarship for artists, the Biggers Foundation, I think it is now, but also we're working on a scholarship. So we are working closely with the United Negro College Fund to raise money to endow a scholarship committed to students of color that want to pursue a career in the creative field. We know that we're rare. There's 8% of the educated art community who actually went to school for arts is Black. So we want to, we have a desire to increase that number.
Yeah, that's good.
But also, what is your vision for that? There's $100,000 goal to get it endowed by the UNCF, but what is your bigger vision for seeing young people of color actually being able to like pursue a career in the arts, but also get educated, be able to not think about cost and.
No, my whole thing, my vision is to also see those creative minds developed in one way or another for the betterment of the community and themselves. I wish there was an NCA here. That I think when that left, I think a lot of the growth that people went through. AICWA's another one. Napoleon, yeah. I mean, we have people throughout the city who was a member of the NCA. I would love to see young people uh, know that this is possible to ink out a living, but you have to be at one point aggressive. You also have to have those three things that I talked about. But you also just can't just create to create. You have to be able to want to know that creativity really never stops. So there's no plateau. You have to keep evolving and evolving because that is exactly what you're supposed to be. And to have people that have talent, we have a lot of talented people in this community, but we don't have a lot of people who have the foundation. And I think the foundation really allows them to explode uh, through the arts or through whatever medium they're going to use. And to be supportive of that is to know that they have to be up for the challenge. So they're going to be tested. And I'd love to be able to say, yes, this person is not just talented, but she's hungry enough to learn fundamentals in order for that she can grow. Evolution is one of the things that I talk about between evolution and involution. Evolution is basically about you put a seed in the ground and it grows a tree and the tree grows fruit becomes an apple. That's the natural order, right?
Mm-hmm.
Evolution is you put that seed in the ground, the seed grows a tree, the tree grows an apple. Evolutionary part of that is that apple becomes apple cider, apple sauce, apple pie, and it keeps growing and growing and growing. That's the way I'd like to see people keep growing, looking for apple wine, apple strudels, those things. Keep on moving because creativity doesn't stand still. And if you get lost in the hype, then you lose the gift that you were giving for a monetary gain. And that's not the goal. It really isn't. The goal is to understand that you have to be able to make a living out of it, no doubt about it. But you have to be able to grow, or you become a victim of your own fame, and that's going to die. It will. It doesn't last forever. And if you can't go beyond that, then you've actually blown the gift that you.
So speaking about education and like learning, you are a student of the world. You've traveled the world
Yeah.
To like study figures and form. And so how is that transformed your work? Like how does that add to your work?
And there is, when I was painting up here, if you live in New England, 75% of the year is gray, right? A little less, maybe 60. Okay, let's say 70% of the year is gray. And so what reflects that is the landscape that we live in, grays and browns and and maybe brick and that kind of stuff, but it's very monotone colors. When I went to, and I would always use color, and I couldn't, and my teacher was saying that you have to get back to this color code. Wasn't doing it. It just didn't make sense to me. As soon as I went to the Caribbean and I saw these pastel houses and the colors that these people were wearing. I said, this is it. This is Shangri-La. I realized then that my color sense was not off. I was just in the wrong place because 65 or 75% of their year is very colorful, a lot of sun, a lot of sun. So you could see it. And when I went to Brazil, the same thing. In Africa, the same thing. I just realized, and not just was the color, but the designs that they did. Oh, I found those designs in Africobra's work. John Biggers is
What's Africa?
Africobra is a group of Africobra is Cobra is really what it's about. Coalition of young, relevant artists. But they were revolutionary. Uh, there was Napoleon who lives here. There's Nelson Stevens, Jeff Donaldson, Mary DePillis, and a few others. Um, they formed a coalition of doing relevant art. They would go into the schools during our conferences and paint on the walls of the schools about the basic necessities of life. Danny Chandler did that also when he was doing knowledge is something or another on in Dudley Station Square. Uh, these were vibrant, active painters, drawers, creators, image makers that it stuck to me. And I knew that I couldn't do art without understanding the gift that I have has to be used in a way that it has to deal with the community that you live in. I have a voice, I have a vehicle now. And sometimes in that vehicle, you just can't paint pretty pictures all the time. Sometimes you have to paint what is relevant in your community in a positive way, just like after COVID. To make
So their images from around the world were relevant in the work that they did here.
the images that I did from Brazil, I lived in Brazil for 5 months. I lived in Haiti for close to a year. Throughout Africa, Nicaragua, all of those people, I looked at their artwork and stuff, and I realized that I'm home in terms of my colors. It wasn't that I was going to be a vacationer. This was not a cruise for me. This was exploratory. And I was into trying to find why I did what I did. And why was this so relevant? I mean, I didn't think of art as being that relevant, but if you look at anybody's house, people come into the house and you look at their walls, that's a comfort zone. It's just like if they play music. Um, that's the music that they want to hear when they go home. Or they read a book. That's the book that they want to. It's a place where you come and you're surrounded with your culture. You're surrounded with your comforts, and you're surrounded with what is relevant to you. And people live that way, even in terms of their colors. So, what was the question?
The question was, you as a student of the world, how does that influence you? So you answered the question.
Yeah, I think that is having. I mean, I just came last year or the year before last. I was teaching in Uganda. Actually, going to 2 years ago at Prairie University, biggest university in Uganda. And my God, I'm saying, is this where I evolved to? I mean, 2 years before that or 3 years before that, I was in Sierra Leone. And it all was because of the arts. I mean, I didn't go to those places. And what did I do in Sierra Leone? I went to the amputee camp. The amputee camp, I didn't know what I was there for. But as I got there, of course, there's messages within you. And you say, this is what I'm supposed to do. What am I going to do? And then went to the amputee camp. These people had their arms and legs cut off. And it was really a camp because of the insurrection that was going on in Sierra Leone. I asked them, I said, listen, I'm going to be drawing portraits of each one of you. I want you, if you don't have to do it, but in some way, talk about what happened to you. Because sometimes when you reveal it in one way, to be able to express yourself in one way, it's easier to do than to talk about it. So they started drawing and all of these other kinds of things. And I said, my God, I was doing one portrait, not figuring that I was going to be doing a bunch of them. The next day there was a line because he went back and showed it. He showed everybody the portrait. Next day was a line of people, and it was one young man who was standing on one leg, and he painted the whole scenario of how he lost his leg by the rebel soldiers. And he was crying, and the things was dripping down on the paper, and it ran. And I wanted to tell him to sit down. He said he didn't want to. He needed to get this out, and it all came out. It was unbelievable. Another person wrote about it because as a poem, and then drew about it. There was probably about 12 to 14 people who did it. And I started crying because I didn't realize how having an avenue to have a voice. This voice wasn't something audible, this was visual. And to have that outlet was able, I thought back, maybe that was my outlet also, after coming back from Vietnam. Mm-hmm. I don't know, but I understood his feelings. I felt his feelings. And I kept his drawing and his words, and he explained the whole thing. It still gets to me.
Mm. That's beautiful. So we went to how you feel about being a student of the world. We're gonna come back home and think about this building and this space. Mm-hmm. And so my parents met here. So this place is really, really important to me. I'm learning detachment really well as my spiritual journey evolves. But you met here. I was conceived here. This was it was a catalyst for artist housing for around the world. There were artists that came from other countries to live here just because of what it said it was going to do. The artists paid 30% of their income, whether they made nothing or something. The artists were cohabitating here. Before I was born, the artists, my dad was part of that. We're cohabitating here. There was a developer who went to the city and said, "Oh, I can make this artist space," and built it out specifically for the artists. If you've ever watched Rent, you know the exact story of this building. Was the director of Rent or producer, one of the two, lived in this building.
There was a lot of folks that came out of here. Sigourney Weaver used to live here.
A lot of wonderful artists. Yeah. This building was retrofit for all types of art. So you had visual artists, you had performing artists, there's a courtyard in the middle. So if an artist needs fresh air or a poet needs to write and sit down, it's perfect. The building was set for families of artists. I have not seen anything like this anywhere else. But it's home to me, and it's home, your space to you. And I know that since I was probably 15, we've been fighting against the landlord for him to sort of appreciate and not see the artist as a niceness and not necessarily a necessity as we are. So we're in this space. My dad in our family business is probably one of the last. We're the 1% over here when it comes to artists. So how do you feel about that? How do you feel about
Well, the metamorphosis, about gentrification. And this was slated for that, this gentrification. I don't feel good about it because you're right. This was an arts community. This was an oasis in an area where it was a very lively area at that time. But this was the oasis, and there was nothing but artists here, dancers, singers, um, all kinds of musicians that were plucked out of here. Uh, Kevin Eubanks went to the Tonight Show, and we lost Lester Webster Lewis, who was incredible artist. We had dancers, Marlo. What's Marlo's name down in the Cape? Okay, all right. Anyways, she was an incredible dancer. She did choreography for major. But it was just art. It was, regardless of the names and stuff like that, we had an assembly of interspirits that we can be inspired from. It was crazy, but it was good, and we loved the fact that we can get around. And, oh my God, beef was everywhere. It was me, but it was a time to celebrate the art, and that's exactly what we did. Um, Getting inspiration from each other, annoying the hell out of each other. At the same time, founding these bonds because everybody knew everybody in this building. It was one person. It's not like it is now.
It was like a dorm, and it was like a really tight knit community
Yeah.
of artists, like a real community. And it was like my father said, an oasis. Like even daycare. I went to my first daycare, not my first, but I went to daycare in this building.
Yeah.
I sat on the
Under
board.
who?
Sister Shalia and Sister Jayla, they were pushed out of this building. We're lucky to have the wonderful Siddiqui Cambone still in this building. It's probably because he's not an artist. But like there's just so many amazing memories, and it's really unfortunate what's happening. And like I'm angry about it. My dad, he's not going to really show anger. Like it comes through me, I guess.
Well, I think I'm not going to get angry because I'm still creating, and I think that like I said, that's my refuge. I have to be able to say, am I going to be here? How long am I going to be here? And how much can I do while I'm here? I think thinking creatively, developing a whole creative niche allows you to be more productive about the place that you live in is not serving you, but I'm serving me. And regardless of that, I'm going to make the best of my conditions until it's time to come.
So that was wonderful. I want to thank everybody for their questions. I know that Valerie Stevens, so let's say hello, Valerie Stevens.
Hey, Val.
That's what the timeline is for the Institute of Black Art. That's something that we're working on. We developed the whole strategy the same year my daughter was born, so in 2014. And the time is now to actually start on that. So we will make sure that we're updating everybody with the timeline around that. The time is now. There's too much hanging on us not doing it. So we have to, but we will update. And thank you so much for the question.
Okay. That's another question.
What are you most proud of in life? Me? Seriously?
Yeah.
Oh.
I think Aziza has a lot of energy. And I think sometimes it's displaced, but she bounces back. And I think she's carrying a heavy load right now. She needs as much spiritual help as anything else. And just to recognize that all of the challenges you don't have to confront. Some of them you have to let go of. But I think that she's trying her best and able to be selfless and making her life and our lives a little bit more comfortable. It's a challenge. I know it is because she has to basically take care of her child and her mother, as well as business and so forth and so on. And sometimes it just feels overwhelmed, and I get it. But I think sometimes the biggest sacrifices come the biggest rewards. And in the long run, the rewards are there, and you'll be able to accept it. So I applaud you for what you do.
Thank you.
Chinese girl.
No, I'm not from there. I'm very American. Oh, hey, Joel.
How are you guys doing? This has been an amazing conversation. I have a couple of questions. So let's see. Are there any young artists you admire that we should be looking into in the future?
Oh yeah, younger artists. Yeah, I mean, there's Pro Black. Well, Pro Black is young to me.
No.
Yeah, I am 74 years old. So young is anyone under 50. So yeah, Pro Black. There are several artists whose name that is escaping me right now, and as soon as we keep on talking. No, I think there's Stephen Hamilton.
Oh, Stephen Hamilton.
It's incredible works. Destiny is unbelievable with her collage of colors.
Destiny Palmer.
Yeah, Destiny Palmer. There are not only Rob Stoll is another one. Yeah.
So Rob Stoll and Rob Gibbs, Beyond Measures, and the MFA are doing a documentary on them.
Awesome.
And Beyond Measures.
Fontini.
Yeah.
Fontini, right?
Percy Fortini, right?
Oh, Percy's incredible artist. I've seen the two artists that worked down on Madison Park who did the mural of Mel King.
Gia.
Unbelievable. I mean, there's a boatload, a groundswell of artists.
So Go Five.
That are
my
coming.
dash.
Huh?
I was saying his name.
Oh, they Go Five. Go Five. Yes. But I mean, yeah, you have to nurture this, and you have to make it necessary, and you have to be able to find a place where art is not wasted because it's not relevant or it doesn't make money or whatever it is, but it does. It does all of those things. I'm living proof of it. And at the same time, you'll be able to, there's a thing that I talked about in Sierra Leone. I said, without a voice, you don't have a choice. So this would be your choice. I think good art does three things. One, it should basically challenge you.
Absolutely.
Two, art doesn't move. Art has to move you. And three, it has to entertain you. So it has to have all three of those elements. And the first one, challenging you, can be challenging you in a political way, or can be challenging you in the application of how you do it. But you have to be challenged to evolve. And those three things, when you get all three of those things in one painting, one poem, or one dance, or one movie, or whatever you're doing, because all of this is under the umbrella of art. If you get all three of those things in one, everybody is moved. If you get two of those things, you get some of those people are moved. If you get one of those things, you're still in the ballpark. Right. It's like I have a CD of Luther Vandross. I love Luther Vandross. As a matter of fact, Aziza did a Luther Vandross concert years ago. But I don't like all of his music. So all of it doesn't have those three things. But his voice still moves me. And that's the kind of thing that I think that a good art really has those elements that you can't walk by it without stopping and knowing somehow you're relating to it. And you have some great artists who have great futures in this city and throughout the country.
And
Absolutely.
Joel, my dad is moved by your art. He loves my blazer. You know the blazer that I'm talking about?
Oh, see? That's your work?
Yes.
Oh, girl.
Thank you. I appreciate it. That's such an honor that you like my art. But I have to agree I think that right now there's so many amazing artists in all the different disciplines in Boston. That's why it's so important for us to protect our artists. I feel like a lot of artists are being displaced or being moved out of the city, and artists really create the landscape. We're the ones who create culture. So it's something that's so important for us to protect. But before you guys tune out and leave us for the night, I do have one question myself. Mr. Goodnight, I remember some years ago watching your documentary, and one of the things that really stuck with me was the relationship that you have with Aziza's mom. And I thought that it was really interesting because, here you guys were, when you talk about, committing yourself to something, right? Here you guys are this non-traditional couple. You never got married, yet, I feel like you guys were the quintessential idea of what a Black family is, in a very non-traditional sense. So my question is, what kind of relationship advice would you give to those of us who are still coming up? And then for Aziza, how has this relationship, growing up with your mom and dad, how has this non-traditional relationship really affected you as a human?
Well, you have to remember that Bernice was an artist also, and she pretty much sacrificed her life as an artist to support me. That's a big sacrifice,
right?
Because she really did want to be an artist. She really wanted to go in that direction. And she made some major sacrifices. And you can't not recognize that if you have any kind of humanities about you. Plus, she was a good, she was a yin for my yang, that kind of stuff. I know everybody
she is, not was.
That's right. She's alive. God bless. But she really was very, very supportive. And when I say advocacy, she was an advocate of the arts, and not knowing whether we were going to be financially successful or not, she was still willing to give up everything for it. And I think that makes a good combination when you have somebody that believes in you sometimes when you don't even believe in yourself.
It's important.
If you don't give back in some ways, then you've missed the boat. You've lost your own humanity. She's not in the best place right now, but we go physically. But we're hanging in there with her.
What's the advice?
What's the advice? I don't have any advice. I just said, you find that this person becomes this is really my best. Yeah, you just said it. This was really my best friend. I mean, sometimes we would talk about everything and anything, and it didn't matter what was on the board. We would be able to at least communicate. We'd go for long trips. We went to Africa and a whole bunch of other places. And that's when we did most of our communicating. Yeah. When we were out of the house or out of the business world. We just kind of enjoyed ourselves in New Orleans, New York, Washington, so forth and so on. And we'd carry this one around. And when she was a baby, I said, "Oh, we gotta let her go."
So how did it feel growing up in that environment? When I was younger, I would be like, "This is a fake family." When I was younger, because my dad lives here in his studio. The business is like downstairs in this building, so literally 50% of my time is in this building. But I'd sleep at a house in Dorchester. But my family, like my parents still dated. We still went on family vacations. My dad was still there for every holiday, or we brought food to him. Like, it felt weird growing up, but as an adult, I see that my parents just have the blueprint for the life that other people are trying to figure out right now.
Right.
So the most perfect, healthy spiritually grounded, 2-parent household in 2 parts of town. That's what it was.
She forgot to tell you that I would have her 2 days out of the week.
I don't remember that.
But when I slept with her, she kept kicking me. And I said, this ain't gonna work. And then I would try and braid her hair to go to school. And the teacher would say, you've been staying with your father, right?
Right. Just new.
And that looked terrible, it was not artsy at all. I said, Bunny, you're gonna have, Bernice is, we call her Bunny. I said, Bunny, you're gonna have to fix this because these braids don't look good.
So it was wonderful. And I had 2 hippie artsy parents that were very conservative, hippie artsy people who were very conservative parents who believed in education as everything. Like, don't let me get a C or don't let me get in trouble in school. Like, it was over. Like, my dad would come and I would immediately cry. Like, he would look at me like, oh my God. So, and then he's like, a military guy. He's really like
an athlete.
And he's an athlete and he's like super rigid. So it was wonderful. It was I think I came out pretty well.
I think so. Not bad, Aziza. Good night.
Yeah, I have to thank these 2 wonderful people. I think it was best for them. They probably stayed together longer as people because they lived in 2 separate places.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think that Bernice would have tolerated, because I get up late at night, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, and I create. I think it's quiet time. It's something that I like to do. Bernice, we stayed together. She was going, oh no, this ain't gonna work. And I understood it. It didn't, because I wasn't going to change. She wasn't going to change. So she took Aziza and she moved from this building to where she lives now.
And I think that's what's great, is that you guys understood each other. You guys understood what you needed.
Not all the time.
And was able. It takes time, right? It takes time.
You know, you have people who disagree. We're both kind of stubborn, and you have people that just disagree. So we disagree a lot, but we never stopped loving each other. So we knew, and you, as you get older, you argue less. You know, it just didn't make any sense. You know, and the little petty stuff didn't mean anything anymore. So we get to arguing, and then all of a sudden I realized that we were basically arguing the same thing. And sometimes she would bring up, and then I said, okay, you're right. And it went over because she didn't carry an argument. And the next day it would be like we were just, the same people all over again.
Yeah, because you're best friends. I love that.
We are. That is my best friend. That is without a doubt. And that's been for close to 40 years.
So that's the love story that made me.
Yeah.
You're going to have to get that story another time, Aziza. I want to hear it.
I want to hear gossip.
Thank you guys so much for joining us tonight, for really kind of giving up your Friday night to spend it with all of these people on Facebook and YouTube and FIL. It was amazing to really hear the background story, the history behind the art. I know that I enjoyed myself. I hope all of you guys who tuned in enjoyed yourself as well. We will be back next Friday with another Boss Moves. But until then, you guys have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you. I want to say one thing, that I learned a lot from young artists also. I mean, it's so good to have young artists in your life, because that's the other component besides the advocacy and the mentorships and the good teachers and such and the loved ones, but to have young artists, because they are burning with energy and they think that they're giving it to me. They think that I'm giving it to them, but I'm receiving as much also. There was one thing, there's a mural over here by Pro Black, and he did that mural in probably about 3-4 weeks. I said, how did that boy do that? I better step up my game.
Amazing. He's such an amazing artist.
Uh,
Love it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
that's it?
Yes.
That's it.
Did I yapped enough?
We're not off.
Oh, we're not off?
No, it still says live.
Where does it say live? Oh, good Lord.
Goodbye.
All
Everyone, guys.
right. Take care. Unlive me.